Good afternoon, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's the start of a new week and it's time for the Weekend Review Show. I'm your host, Dagless, and joining me is Billy Mulley. Billy, how are you getting on?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Yeah, some very good games over the weekend, some sort of shocking results, and I'm sure we'll get diving into those quite soon. And yeah, glad you've left my team out of this week's schedule because it wasn't the best of weekends for me.
Yeah, we have opted to leave Luton's loss against Birmingham out. Billy will be pleased to hear, and I'm sure Hatters fans will be as well. But people watching, let us know, did you go to a game this weekend? What did you make of your team's result, and what are you hoping for in terms of a response from potential losses, or of course, how can you build on victories that were achieved? Let's get straight into the action though. We're going to start with Barnsley's win over QPR. Billy, Barnsley have finally got a win on the board. So let's focus on them first of all. Could this be the start of the great escape for the Tykes, do you think?
Certainly scope for it, and I'd seen something after the game had finished that it was 3 points from a possible 39, playing a team with 17 points from their last 7. So you knew what the result was going to be. But I think it has been coming for Barnsley. They came to Luton the other day and played really well. In terms of what Asbaghi's doing, I think he's got a good core group of players. Obviously quite young and in some ways inexperienced, but I think they're starting to play his brand of football, and I think that's going to be quite important. The confidence that this win will give them, I think that's going to also bode well for them in this sort of relegation battle. And what we've seen in Barnsley, they've finished the last 3 seasons incredibly well, which makes them staying up, a genuine possibility now that it's 5 points from escaping those relegation places. So yeah, I think looking into the game as well, I think they fully deserved it. A bit of quality from Domingos Quina. Looks like a really good signing. One of the standouts so far. I know it's quite early into his Barnsley career, but I think the early signs suggest that he's going to be quite a pivotal figure as the season progresses. And I think defensively speaking, that they've got sort of a solid back line that hasn't been too much of a problem this season. It has been the sort of the goal scorer in front, but now Colton Morris as well. He does look a player that could sort of help fire Barnsley in the right direction, and add in, Amin Bassi and Domingos Quina for that sort of creativity that they bring. I think that could be massive for them. And, looking at QPR, it's of course going to be disappointing when you hear the statistics around only 3 points and from a 39 available. But at the same time, I think it has been coming for Barnsley.
I mean, you look at the league tab, Barnsley's frankly awful form in recent times. Still only just 5 points from safety, aren't they? And it's looking like it's going to be 1 from 4 teams that stay up, isn't it? At the bottom, I think the rest of the division has got a fairly healthy gap. You can't see anyone really getting drawn into that. Reading we're going to get onto in a minute, and they've got their own troubles. Peterborough United definitely blow hot and cold. I guess Derby are perhaps the one threat of the 4 that are the most likely to stop Barnsley staying up, would you say, Billy?
Yeah, I think what Derby have in their favour as well as dealing with every setback very, very well. They've also got that very good goal difference at the moment. Took a little bit of a battering against Middlesbrough, but ultimately, I don't think anyone else is going to sort of challenge that goal difference. And I think out of those teams that you mentioned, Derby probably do have the better chance of staying up. I know with Reading, they do have players coming back, and with everything going on with the managerial situation, that could be they could be boosted, we could say at this point. But I think as things stand, Derby look in a good position to carry on their fight, whereas Barnsley, I think, going back to what I said about the last 3 seasons, how well they've ended it, I'm sure that's going to be in the thought process and something they'll be looking to do once again.
Just touched on QPR as well, Billy, before we move on to the next game. The result leaves them 4th in the table. It's not, panic stations, but it is definitely a game that they should have been winning, particularly when they want to try and keep tabs on the top two. And suddenly, Fulham already have been kind of running away with it, and now a gap's opened up a little bit more to second place as well, hasn't it, with Bournemouth winning?
Yeah, that's the disappointing aspect. I think they've been really dragged into that automatic promotion race in recent weeks, that second spot. No one really dominating and looking to, assert sort of the dominance that Fulham have. So in that respect, to lose to the bottom club that have been in such poor form is very disappointing. But I think in the grand scheme of things, they've been on excellent form. QPR have proven to be excellent at times this year. It's just making sure that this performance and this result doesn't derail everything that they've built so far. I think it also showed a little bit of over-reliance. I think what Mark Warburton said on Chris Willock, player that's been brilliant this season, and a minor injury it was described as, but having both Willock and Charing aside, I'm sure will be massive in terms of their continued pursuit of getting promoted this season.
Okay, let's move on to the next game. Reading against Coventry City. Coventry running out 3-2 winners away at Reading. The Royals did go in front. Lucas Zhao putting them 1-0 up, and Dominic Hyam just scored before half-time to restore parity. Michael Rose scored just after half-time for the Sky Blues. For Andy Yeardom got Reading back level, and then Ian Matson wrapped up the 3 points for the away side. Let's focus on Reading though, Billy, first of all. It's safe to say it's not a particularly happy camp at the moment. It hasn't been for some time. And it looks seemingly quite likely now that Veljko Paunovic is going to lose his job. Their form's been terrible, I think it's fair to say. Can you see him keeping his spot as manager now, or is it time for a change in the dugout, would you say, for the Royals?
I think it's definitely time for a change, and I don't think that's a pure reflection on Paunovic's capabilities of a manager. I think it's, a load of factors that haven't really gone in his favour. Been dealt some pretty awful cards in terms of injuries this season, transfer embargo, in terms of the contentness within the camp. I don't think it's been too great. So, yeah, from the onset, it was a very, very difficult job this season. A lot of young players have had to, early in their progression as sort of youth team players have stepped up to the first team stage, which I know is incredible in terms of experience for them, but it's been quite damaging for Reading as a football club. As I said, those injuries have not helped whatsoever. They're starting to see a few players come back, which could be crucial. And but I guess in the way we kind of think of it at the moment, Paunovic's job is really in the balance. There's sort of there can be arguments for it, but I think for me, it's time for him to go. I think he could be a very good manager elsewhere, but in terms of what's happening at Reading, I can't really see an out for him.
Yeah, and it certainly appears that it's not just Paunovic there are issues with higher up as well. It certainly looks like perhaps some personnel change are needed, but whether that's going to happen is anyone's guess really at this stage. As for Coventry though, Billy, a good win for them, an important win, keeps them in that playoff hunt. Obviously they've dropped down the table since the start of the season where they're in great form. It's all about just trying to build some more consistency with the Sky Blues, isn't it?
Yeah, I think with Coventry as well, even when the results weren't quite going their way, the performance levels didn't really dip too much. I think they've been one of the more consistent sides in terms of their performances this season. Don't think they've completely blown away teams, but at the same time, they haven't been completely outplayed. So in that kind of respect, that's why I see them as consistently being in the running as the season progresses. As we say, some very, very good players within that team, but I think sort of the togetherness that Mark Robins has out of his side and sort of the defensive resilience as well. I think they're two key factors and why I think they'll go all the way in terms of continuing to compete for a playoff spot. Whether they will secure one, I do not know yet. I think it depends on the sort of the rest of the teams around them, how they get on. But a massive result for them. Reading have been struggling, but they have had some of their key players return from injury, which is sort of that welcome boost, which could create a bit of a better atmosphere. But yeah, I think a professional display from Coventry is probably the best way to put it. And seeing Ian Martson play a little bit more advanced is sort of a key development, something that be interesting to see if it keeps on reaping its rewards.
Reading could probably do with some of that togetherness that Coventry have. I think it's probably fair to say at this stage of the season. One more game to talk about in the Sky Bet Championship on the weekend. That's Middlesbrough's win over Derby County, a 4-1 victory for the Boro. They've moved inside the top 6 places. And Billy, we know what a wonderful job Chris Wilde has done since arriving at the Riverside. They got themselves into the top 6. I guess the question has to be, can they stay there between now and the rest of the season? They're certainly, on paper, looking like real contenders now, aren't they, for the top 6?
Yeah, I think there's 2 questions, whether they can stay in the top 6 or whether they can actually go on for automatic promotion, because for me, they are the real deal. I think Bournemouth, of course, have the sort of the new signings and could have the bounce for that. But apart from Fulham, I see Middlesbrough as probably the side to beat at the moment. Obviously, in excellent form. Chris Wilder's revitalised the whole feeling around Riverside Stadium. So yeah, in that respect, I'm really excited to see what else Middlesbrough can do this season. I think we've seen it all over social media about Zai Jones and how brilliant he was. I think he's been steadily improving this season, but sort of last few weeks he's really come to the fray and shown that he is a top championship player and has a really big future ahead of him. And when you consider how well Jed Spence has been doing at Nottingham Forest, to know that you've got more than a competent option at right wing back, I think that's good for Borough fans to know. And I don't think many teams will in what remains of the season will beat Derby as convincingly. As we've spoken about before, they are a very difficult team to beat. Don't concede too many goals, and they're in that false position because of the 21 points deducted. And yeah, I think anybody to beat Derby by that scoreline has to be considered as one of the top teams in the division. That's exactly what they are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for Derby, it's obviously not a great result by no means, but they shouldn't be too concerned by it. I think a lot of teams are going to go to Middlesbrough between now and the end of the season and lose. I guess for Wayne Rooney, it's just a shame that they were level, 5 minutes before the break, and by half time they were 3-1 down, and that's pretty much the game was done by them. But even so, it's not necessarily a time to worry for Derby, is it? It's the games against the sides obviously around them in the relegation zone and the ones nearer them in the league table as well that are really going to matter, isn't it, between now and the end of the campaign?
As you say, yeah, it was. They were drawing for a while. Quite a tightly contested game in stages. Although Middlesbrough did show their quality throughout, I think Derby did put out a good enough performance in stages. But I think it just goes to show how devastating Middlesbrough are becoming going forward. Obviously, recruited a lot on their front line in January, and I think that's starting to pay dividends. I think they pounced on defensive errors from Derby quite well, and as you say, anyone going to Riverside Stadium next few weeks, it's going to be a very, very difficult contest. And I, as a Luton fan, I'm not looking forward to going there one little bit.
No, I can imagine that, especially after the weekend. I know we weren't going to mention it, Billy. We've mentioned it twice now, the Luton's loss. So we'll try not to mention it anymore now, though. We are going to move on to League One, so it'll be the last we speak of the Hatters, at least for this afternoon. We spoke about this game on the weekend preview show on Friday afternoon. It's Morecambe v Gillingham, a big game towards the bottom end of the League One table. Gillingham in decent form since Neil Harris had gone in. 2 wins out of the 3 that he'd managed. And Morecambe obviously just have that little gap to those 3 sides below them in the table, but still need to get out of the relegation zone themselves. Gillingham were leading right up until the last few minutes, and Jonathan Obika got an important point for the Shrimps. Billy, looking at it, who do you think would be more happy with that result?
It's difficult because I think if you would have looked at the game beforehand, you would have thought a point would have been better for Gillingham. But given that they were 1-0 up with 6 minutes to go, I think Morecambe will be quite content that they've managed to pave themselves back into the game and to get a result against the side, as you say, have had that sort of new manager bounce. So in that respect, I think both clubs will be slightly disappointed. 3 points would have been pivotal in terms of this relegation battle that we're seeing emerge. Gillingham, I honestly thought were dead and buried up until a few weeks ago, I think, in terms of their form, and then going to lose Cole Dempsey, who's been integral to everything this season. I thought that was going to be a real big blow for them. And really damaged their chances of staying up. So Neil Harris has come in, done a really, really good job, and yeah, excited to see what else he can do with this Gillingham side. Whereas Morecambe, they're now without a winning 5, and I don't think that's the fault of trying, because they've put in a good display in terms of their expected goals, in terms of the amount of shots they had. They gave it a real good go. But I think it's winning games like this that Morecambe need to prioritise, because, as we say, a relentless schedule, teams around them starting to pick up points, and as we get into this sort of danger time of the season, it's all about picking up points. And it doesn't matter how they come, you can dominate games. It's coming to the crunch time where the results-based industry is pretty much all that matters.
It was quite a typical Morecambe display, wasn't it? In many ways, Billy, perhaps just without the amount of goals we've perhaps come accustomed to seeing from them. 22 shots, only 4 on target though, and nearly 70% possession as well. So I guess in one sense, Morecambe, need to be a little bit more clinical. I think it's fair to say. But at the same time, it's another sign that Gillingham defensively have improved since Neil Harris has gone in there. They've picked up at the back, haven't they? And only shipped the 1 goal right towards the end of the game. That's probably another good sign, isn't it, for Gillingham? Not only that the results are coming, but they look a little bit more defensively resolute.
Yeah, and I think you look at that back line as well, Conor Masterson, Jack Tucker, and then you've got the experience of Max Emma. I think that's a strong enough League One defensive line, I think, to steer yourselves to safety. But again, it does come to the forward department. All need to be firing to ensure survival. But yeah, as you say, this defensive resilience is going to be massive for them in what remains of the season. Some big clashes coming up, and they're in touch and distance of survival. So I think there's a much better mood within the camp now. Sometimes we see new managers go in and have that instant impact, but sometimes that those problems can remain over to a new manager. But I think definitely what's going on at Gillingham at the moment is a sense of a new spirit and sort of a newfound feeling that they can actually get out of the position they are in. Be interesting to see how both teams do. I'd like to see them both stay up. Morecambe, obviously, with their recent, the fact that they've only just been promoted into the league, and Gillingham as well, because they just seem to find a way each year. And I know last year wasn't the same, because they actually had a real good season. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they can maintain their spot in the 3rd tier for next season.
Have to see what happens there. One of the League One games to talk about, up towards the right end of the standings, Sheffield Wednesday against Rotherham United on Sunday afternoon. A Yorkshire derby between the Owls and the Millers. Both came into the game in really good form, but it was Rotherham who maintained their winning run with a 2-0 victory. Billy is obviously going to be a big test for the Millers, but they come out of it unscathed, continue their winning run, and looking very hard to catch at the moment, aren't they? Only Wigan realistically looking like a team that might be able to reel them in.
Yeah, another real indication that they are worthy of going on and sealing the League One title this season. I think the nature that they were relegated last season was a little bit unfortunate, but they managed to keep a core group of players together. Lewis Wing, returned to Middlesbrough and then went back out on loan. But they've managed to keep those sort of players. Ben Wiles, Dan Barlaser as well, and Michael Smith, all players that impressed last season, but have been even more impressive this season at the top end of League One. And yeah, it was an interesting game yesterday, because it wasn't the typical nice football that we've come to expect from both clubs. I don't think the pitch helped. It became a bit of a battle, but I think that sort of shows the tighter credentials that Rotherham have. Paul Warne's side went in different ways, and yeah, I think it's massive in terms of the grand scheme of who's gonna lift the League One title. Rotherham have been heavily backed, I think, after the start of the campaign, and yeah, it seems that it could be going that way now. Wigan might be able to challenge their devastating nature, but at the moment, I think all eyes have to be on Rotherham, and it's sort of a question of when rather than if.
Certainly looking very good for Paul Warne's men. As for Darren Moore's team, it's all about trying to get back to winning ways as soon as possible and bounce back from that disappointment at Hillsborough on Sunday. Let's just talk League Two now before we wrap up the weekend review show. And we'll start with Walsall 1, Tranmere 0. Billy, this would have broken a fair few coupons, I would say, over the course of the weekend. Obviously, Tranmere looking to try and get themselves back into Sky Bet League One at the end of this season. And Walsall are in free fall. Obviously, Matt Taylor paying for that with his job. It looks like it potentially a good move from the Saddlers, removing Taylor, getting a victory over the weekend. It's all about how they're going to try and build on that now, isn't it?
Yeah. I think when news emerged that Matt Taylor had departed, I made a comment that I think the problems lie a little bit deeper than that. But I think that proves already that that might not be the case. An excellent win against a team that have been in excellent form. I know they did lose quite convincingly to Forest Green, but who doesn't in this division? But I think Walsall will be very, very proud in terms of their performance. Tranmere don't tend to score too many goals, but they don't concede many at all. And Walsall managed to grab the all-important winner late on in the game, which is, again, something that Tranmere don't do. So, yeah, a massive win takes them up to 18th. And it came at a time where, as you say, Walsall were in free fall. I think the two teams that were behind them, Oldham and Scunthorpe, were probably eyeing them up as a team that they could definitely leapfrog and, progress above and take the fight even further. But at the same time, Walsall have now won this real important clash. And it remains to be seen what can be made of this season, but a real positive at sort of a crucial time as well.
Amazing what a win can do, isn't it? Down at the bottom of League Two, Walsall by no means safe. Obviously, still only 6 points above the drop zone, but that win's moved them from 21st into 18th, and obviously get another win, and suddenly they're looking a little bit more like a mid-table side. As for Tranmere, though, Billy, it's another indictment of their goal-scoring woes, really, isn't it? It's not really been a problem, surprisingly. You only have to look at their league table position to see that. But even so, if they could score a few more goals, they probably would have won this game. They only had the one shot on target, didn't they?
Yeah, which to me suggests it's sort of the problem. I say problem, can't really say problem when they sit second in the league, but the issue in this game in isolation seems to be the creativity. I don't know if that's been the case in more recent games, but they do have. When you look at their options on paper, it's a strong enough attacking lineup to beat a team that's been in as bad form as Walsall have been, but. I think they've focused a lot on their defensive resilience this season, and that's really what's got them up to second place. I don't think anybody at this stage is going to be challenging Forest Green at the top of the division, but it's now about securing automatic promotion, and these are the kind of results that you need to be avoiding if automatic promotion is on the cards this season. I guess here the nature of the loss is disheartening, but whether they can get straight back to winning ways, it remains to be seen. But they did after the Forest Green loss, after a real disappointing display. They managed to secure 7 points from the next three. So if they can do that, I'm sure no one will be complaining.
One final game to talk about in League Two, and that's Exeter City's win away at Bradford. Look at the league table now, Billy. Exeter suddenly have the automatic promotion race in their hands. They've got a game in hand over Northampton, who drew, and Northampton only 2 points above the Grecians. And then Tranmere, who we've just mentioned, lost at the weekend, are only 5 points clear of Exeter. And Exeter have 2 games in hand of them. So, the Grecians suddenly doing what they so often do in League Two. Can this be the one where they finally get over the line, though, and get themselves up into League One?
I hope so, because the amount of times they fall at the final hurdle, I think the whole footballing world is hoping that they do because of that sort of story and the rationale behind it. But it seems that Exeter at this point are becoming what Tranmere have been like in terms of defensively very, very sound. I think it's just conceding 1 in their last 7, but they're just edging out games at the moment. And, they're doing it at the right time of the season. First of all, that run sort of cemented their sort of playoff stance, and now that's converted into a charge towards the automatic zone. And with Tranmere not winning, Northampton as well, not dominating at the moment, I guess Exeter are the team to watch out for. And I think we've gone past that stage of saying that they could challenge for the title, because as we've said before, Forest Green have been so dominant, and anytime they have been dealt any little setbacks, they've responded really well. But in terms of the automatic promotion race, this is massive for Exeter, and a real good result against a team that have been inconsistent, but are still considered one of the bigger teams, one of the better teams in terms of the squad this season. So yeah, a massive result for Exeter.
And as for Bradford, it's just more frustration, isn't it, Billy? Expectation was obviously high at the start of the season with Derek Adams going in there as well, given the job he'd done at Morecambe last year. But they've just never really managed to string results together, have they? And they're not out of the playoff picture. I don't think that's fair to say. But the signs would suggest that they're not going to be able to put the run of form needed to get into the top 7.
That's it. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned the word inconsistent, because I think that's what's been preventing them all season. They have a slight run of good fortune and good results, and then a disappointing loss happens somewhere in between. But I think they have been dealt a big blow in the loss of Dion Pereira. It seemed that he was going to come in and be that sort of source of creativity and a bit of like a spark, really, and someone that could help their promotion charge. But seeing him injured within sort of a couple of weeks of being there, I think that it is massive for them. Of course, there's still so much football left to play this season. We say we're coming into sort of the crunch time of the season or whatever, but there is still a lot of football to be played, and I'm sure Bradford will continue to knock on the door. Whether they will get in or not, it remains to be seen on the other clubs who are competing in and around them. But yeah, I think Bradford will be in and around that playoff mix as we come to the end of the season.
Okay, we'll see what happens for both clubs in terms of their promotion aspirations between now and the end of the campaign. Time for us to go then from the weekend review show for this week. Coming up on Football League One TV, one more show this afternoon. That's at 2:30. It's the debate, and this time it's looking at the Championship playoff race. Who's going to get into that top 6 by the end of the season and then achieve a promotion to the Premier League? Certainly a good debate to be had. Alfie Bones will be hosting that one, and he's joined by Marcus Alley. Billy, great to get your thoughts on the weekend's action this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're getting up to. Hopefully continuing to work. And wherever people have been watching from home from, thanks for joining us to enjoy the rest of your week. We'll speak to you very soon.